Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I am Adrian Fort.
And I'm Dalton Gentry.
And we're starting some new crap today.
Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. We're starting year 6. We're moving on. Order of the Phoenix is over. This is the 6th year, the 6th book. And you are thrilled. Yes. One of these days, I just want you to sit and stare at the camera for the entire 28 minutes of this, very Nick Offerman style. Would you like me to at least give some chapter breakdown?
Yes.
Okay. We have 2 chapters here. We have The Other Minister, the first chapter here, where Cornelius Fudge appears in the Prime Minister's office.
Quit looking at me.
Okay. Cornelius Fudge appears in the Prime Minister's office and basically says, hey, Voldemort's back. Voldemort's coming. Apparently, the Prime Minister now knows that witches and wizards are a thing. He's known all along. We also find out that we have a new Minister of Magic. Just at the end, thrown in a bit there. But it is different. It's a different beginning. So that's a good thing. That's what you like.
We've got a different chapter 2 as well.
Chapter 2, Spinner's End. Instead of getting thrown into straight Harry Potter, what Harry Potter's doing this summer, we visit Snape. Bellatrix and Miss Malfoy, Nessa I believe her name is, go to visit Snape, and they make a little promise. And we're going to get into that, I think. I think it's a good thing. See what your opinions are on that.
Yeah.
The Unbreakable Vow.
The Unbreakable Vow.
Yeah.
So, at the beginning there, we've got a nice picture of, I believe, Tony Blair. Tony Blair and his relationship with George Bush.
Yeah.
Which, this is one of the things, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is out of left field. Either way, I'll be attacked for it, I'm sure. This is one of the things that keeps this series from being literature. Literature is made in observation.
Okay.
Not judgment. Hemingway said that the writer seeks to understand, not to judge. It's not a direct quote, but it's something like that. And that's coming from a writer as judgmental as Hemingway, who did not judge in his writing, just painted pictures.
Okay.
Would judge with characters, but would not judge characters. J.K. Rowling does everything from fat-shaming all the way up to politics in this novel, and is very, in this series, and is very transparent. Now, the fat-shaming has subsided a bit. One wonders if J.K. Rowling became completely aware of the fact that all of her bad guys were fat people, and all of her fat people were bad guys. So I think there's something there to wonder about.
Let's talk about that a little more next week, okay? We're going to meet a new character. His
Okay.
name is Horace Slughorn.
Sounds fat.
And we're going to get into that a little bit more next week. So just put that in the back pocket for now, keep it on the back burner. But this is a different chapter. This is a different beginning. So maybe that's a good thing. And we are immediately setting the events to this novel here. We are not starting with Harry Potter had a bad summer, people were mean to him, and he got out again.
Right.
We're setting the events that the war is here, the war is real, and it is such a big, grandiose thing that it will affect both the Muggle world and the Wizards world. So that is a good thing here. We got a little momentum getting started at least. Gets you off to a run.
Yeah, I am interested in the introduction of a new Minister of Magic.
Okay.
I think that this character is someone who might prove to be a bit meatier than the last one.
Weren't a Fudge fan?
No, but,
Okay.
but Fudge is written very, very one note, right?
Okay.
He's the screw-up who's in the government. One wonders if this man is supposed to be a bit more, Churchill.
Okay.
Than was Fudge.
We are getting Scrimgeour, who seems like more, in my opinion, he is a war minister. Fudge seems to embody everything that was good until the time. Jovial, having a good time, things are fine, not too worried about his job, just along with the ride. Scrimgeour seems more like very hardened, the man for the job for the time. And it is mentioned in here that, as soon as it was found out that Voldemort's back, Fudge was immediately fired. I mean, politics in the wizarding world are just that easy that if, you screw up, you're out. Time to move on with life.
You said Scrimgeour came back? Did you say Scrimgeour came as soon as Scrimgeour comes back?
Oh, no, excuse me. As soon as Fudge comes back.
Oh, okay.
As soon as he had come back to work from, Voldemort
Yeah,
returning
yeah,
everything,
yeah.
immediately sacked.
Yeah.
So I do think that is an interesting point there. And apparently, the Minister of Magic has been keeping wizards around the Prime Minister of England, England, I would assume, to protect him. Kingsley Shacklebolt was mentioned as his right-hand man. Turns out he was a wizard all along.
Yeah, where did that Kingsley Shacklebolt? Where do we know that name from?
He's been mentioned a few times before. He's always been one of the good guys, one of the ones there defending
Okay.
He may have been Order of the Phoenix as well. He may have been mentioned throughout that.
I was going to say, because I knew that name when it came up.
Yeah.
I didn't know exactly where it came from.
I hate to say it. It seemed to be a name that was recognizable enough to be recognizable, but not important enough to be memorable. Exactly.
The character himself was not memorable.
Yes. So I do think we have some good momentum, and I think it's a good thing here. Harry Potter hasn't even shown up yet. We're just getting mentions of what's going on. I do think Chapter 2 has a lot going on with it. I'm kind of excited to get your feelings towards that. So Bellatrix and her sister, who is Malfoy's wife, show up at Snape's hovel of an apartment, whatever you want to call it, and basically coax Snape, against Bellatrix's wishes, to make the unbreakable vow, to do what must be done to protect Draco. What are you feeling about this here?
So Draco and Harry Potter are like second cousins, right?
How would you get that?
Bellatrix Lestrange. Oh, never mind. Because I was thinking that
Sirius was
an
godfather.
Uncle, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So never mind. Then that's out the window. But Snape gets his own chapter, so that means I'm sure he dies.
Okay.
I'm sure he will become the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher in this novel because we already get a hint at it.
Okay.
I think that he's going to... So, again, we've got this double agent thing going on, right?
Yes.
I believe that he is siding towards Dumbledore.
Okay.
That is how I would read the situation. Dumbledore seems too godlike in this series to make that mistake.
Okay.
Voldemort, however, does not, and it would be interesting to see the one thing that ends up screwing Voldemort being trusting Snape, because Voldemort is not the trusting type.
Okay. And it is pointed out in this that Snape is held in very high regard by Voldemort.
And
he
by
knows,
Dumbledore.
yes, he seems to know what's going on behind the scenes. Both parties here. So much so that Bellatrix is almost offended.
Right.
That Snape would know something that she did not know. And it is kind of implied that Bellatrix is, I'm not going to say a lover of Voldemort. They're not lovers, but the ultimate fangirl groupie. I mean, anything that he would want, she would do.
Right.
That seems to be how she reads throughout this. Now, the unbreakable vow here. Any thoughts on what that is? Because it doesn't really go into huge depth as to what that is, except it is a huge deal.
I am assuming that if one breaks the unbreakable vow, they die.
Okay.
Right? I'm assuming this is like the Imperious Curse. The
Okay.
Imperious Curse is the death curse, right?
Whoa. No, it's not, and I cannot think of what the death curse is. It's Avada Kedavra.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, what do you believe? Because people seem to love Adrian taking shots in the dark here, because, like, sometimes you hit it. And, like, I get people in the comments...
Well, I've seen a lot of episodes of Scooby-Doo.
Fair enough. I get people in the comments who are, like, just calling bullshit that, like, you've read ahead and you know what's going on, or, like...
I promise you that is
Yeah.
not the case.
And, like, I'm like, no, sometimes he's just really good. Just let him have it.
Sometimes I don't even want to do the reading that we're on.
What do you believe do you have any assumptions, any guesses? What's going to happen? What Malfoy's been tasked to do that he's going to need protection for?
Oh, I believe that he has been tasked to kill Harry Potter in some way. It seems to be some way very specific, some way that is dangerous. And Snape is going to pull the double agent move. He is going to he's going to try to protect Harry Potter, as well as breaking the vow, which will in some way save Draco as well.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So Snape is going to save Harry Potter
and Draco
and
die.
Die. Die the hero's death.
Right.
Okay.
That seems to be what's going to go on, because there's a lot of build up here, and one does not get the impression that Snape wants ill to come to any of the children.
Okay.
Particularly.
And, it is interesting. We get some Snape dynamic here, and that is a good thing, because I do think Snape is a good character.
So this chapter automatically makes Snape the most three-dimensional character in the series.
Okay. Are you going to just shoot that out there and go with that?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. That's a good thing, though.
It
only took 6 books, but we're getting some character development. It's like the basics of writing.
Yeah.
God, I can't believe I just said that about Harry Potter. What the fuck have you done to me? Anyway, I think it is a good thing to get to know Snape a little bit more. He is an interesting character. And it goes so far to paint a picture of a man who at one point in time was definitely on the wrong side of the fence. He supported Voldemort. He was just beyond him 100%. And Voldemort died.
Right.
And at that point, Snape basically said, hey, I thought he was gone. You got to get a living somewhere. Yeah, this is what I do now. This is what I care about. Now that he's back, that's great. I've been here all along. But I wasn't out there looking for him because, you got to move on.
Right.
Put your money on the wrong horse, you got to go to work the next day because you can't afford the bills. So Snape is the Adrian Ford of Harry Potter land.
I do not agree with that sentiment.
No.
There is no Adrian in Harry Potter land because these characters suck. Adrian does not suck.
Good?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the one thing that bothers me about that entire sort of ordeal, about this entire sort of ordeal with the Death Eaters and whatnot, is how very definitional it is. Were there any Death Eaters that were not Slytherin?
It seems to be, as far as I can tell, the bad guys are the Slytherins. They're in Slytherin house. Which was the big build-up at the beginning where, Harry Potter was like, I don't want to be in Slytherin. I don't want to be in Slytherin.
Right, but if you're Dumbledore, don't you at some point start to do some weeding there? You set in correctional classes for Slytherins to make them Hufflepuffs?
Yeah.
How do you raise your own villains?
I can't remember if this was a line from the actual book or the movie.
The movie, I guarantee you it was the movie.
It was probably the
All
movie.
anyone remembers is the movies.
That's fair. But, come on, man. This is my childhood. But it was, along the lines of not a witch or wizard that has gone bad was not in Slytherin. So, if you're in Slytherin, you might do good things. You may just be an extremely motivated, extremely determined person. Or you're going to be a bad guy. Easy as that.
Yeah.
But you're always going to have that little sleaze about you.
Yeah.
So.
It's just very definitional.
Okay.
It's very uncomplicated.
Okay. Now, Dumbledore has been returned to power in this. Minister says that Dumbledore's back, all should be well, on the Hogwarts side of things.
We even get the implication, perhaps, that Dumbledore is more powerful than he had been, don't we? Fudge says something along the lines of, I'll check with Dumbledore or something.
Yes. We get that on that end, but just the next chapter, Snape says that Dumbledore is now weak. The battle against Voldemort had weakened the old man. He's not what he used to be.
Yeah.
So we're getting both ends of the fence here, what might be going on.
Well, I think that, so there is a difference between the types of power, though, is there not?
Yes.
Snape is talking about regenerative power, about the magical power, whereas Fudge, in a very politician-type way, is talking about
the pull.
Stately power.
Yeah,
the
political pull.
Being able to influence.
And see, that's an interesting thing here, because at its core, this is fantasy literature. And age is a weird thing in fantasy literature. We've discussed this before, how Dumbledore is an ancient man, considerably older than any human should be, but he's still spry, he's still healthy. Age, in this magical fantasy realm, usually denotes power. The older you are, the more power you have, because you've had more time to collect tangible wisdom, more time to practice your craft. So just because Dumbledore is older, as Snape's putting it, I don't believe that he's being billed as a lot weaker at the time. It concerns me when you write things.
Oh, I was just taking notes because I didn't know when you were going to shut your goddamn mouth.
Fair enough. What do you got?
So the age equaling power thing, that goes back to medieval literature even. So probably before that even. For a king to make it to old age meant very good things.
It's a big deal.
For a lot of reasons. One, he managed not to die.
Fair.
Two, he managed not to die, which means that he is healthy. Not just that he didn't die in battle, but that he didn't die from some other malady.
Yeah.
Right? Which means that you probably haven't had plague in your lands for a while. It also means that there's been stability in the state. Mm-hmm. Stability in the state means good things because that means that you're
doing a good job.
You're doing a good job. You're probably innovating.
Okay.
You're doing things which are beneficial not only to your society but probably to your neighbors because they haven't come to kill you yet. So that idea in fantasy is very heavily rooted in the tradition of the old wise king throughout much of Western culture.
Okay. It's a good point, actually.
Well, it's a very interesting point because Voldemort is also older.
He is?
He is not depicted that way, is he?
Yeah.
He's not depicted as, unless I am mistaken, the image that I have of Voldemort is not old and hunched.
You're correct.
It is more prime.
Yes.
So, anytime in fantasy literature, anytime in history, not any time in history, but when you hear about a young king, what is that young king doing?
Something usually not right. He's screwing something up.
He's trying to expand his power.
Okay.
That's where the old king is happy with his land in the fantasy literature.
Just wants to sit back and live out those last years because, 40's the prime time to die, baby.
Right. The young king, those guys to the left of us, they got peaches on their land. Kind of like peaches. I don't want to have to pay for them. Let's go sack them. So that is an interesting way to look at those two figureheads in this novel. And in that you have Snape as well, who plays into the fantasy role of a religious leader.
Okay.
Not the godly religious leader, not the I'm trying to think of the correct terms. Fantasy is something that I'm not incredibly well versed in, but a lot of times the leader of the church is very two-faced.
Okay.
Is very slick.
Puts on a good show, but he's got a lot going on behind the curtain.
So, Animal Farm.
Okay.
Was it the Raven? Wasn't it? Was it the Raven? It's been. I'm sorry. I'm going to mess this up. But he was sort of playing it at both sides of the fence, if I remember correctly.
Okay. Whatever's best for him.
Not necessarily even that. Just sort of trying to tread water at some point, right? The best thing for the individual is not to die.
Okay.
If you're the individual that doesn't have all the power, then not to die means, well, sometimes you gotta be two-faced.
Okay. It does seem like Snape is in that stereotypical character. Not so much as Wormtail, because we get mentioned of Wormtail again. He is not the underbelly Weasley character. He's just getting by on the scraps. Snape seems to be a very slick, very professional guy. And he is able to play both sides of those fences very well.
And if you can tell both sides of the fence that God is on their side, both are going to favor you.
There you go.
Right, you're going to have power in both of those courts.
Now, I'd like to go back to your age thing a little bit more and just kind of sink this in just a little bit more. The very first book, we get mention of Voldemort's hunger for not only power, but immortality. That's the whole deal with the Sorcerer's Stone. Voldemort wanted to keep it alive, stay alive forever. So in the event, let's say, if age denotes power in fantasy literature, then to be immortal would be God. If you can live forever, you would have limitless power. You would be the greatest king there ever was.
There is, however, a small difference between being able to live forever and being immortal, is there not?
Okay.
Being immortal...
assume you couldn't be killed.
Right.
Yes, live forever is different, yes.
Means you got to be the Snape type still, right? To sort of bob and weave between things so that you do not become severed from this life.
Okay. I don't have a lot from the comments section this week. However, there were 2 or 3 people which concerned me. Did we mention reading Twilight last week? I must have very pungently mentioned reading Twilight.
I think we did. We mentioned Twilight and Hunger Games, I think.
Because, damn, there were a lot of people who were like, oh, make him suffer through Twilight next. I'm like, God, let's just give him a break.
Well,
let him breathe.
We have 2 1,000-page books in the way of that.
There was someone who mentioned something along the lines of, why do you keep telling him there's only 2 more and they're not as big? They're just as big. Just as big as the 5th one.
That's a big... How many pages is this, for Christ's
This particular one?
Yeah.
In
Over
hardback,
600.
652.
Yeah. I think they are the same, yeah. That's the font size there.
Okay.
But I don't know why you need this much real estate to tell these stories, especially since the first 5, at least, were all the same story.
Okay. Do you need the real estate to tell the story on this one? Or do you just do it because you're making the money? Because at this point, we're at book 6. I'm a firm believer that if you can get a sequel to be successful, you're doing well. Once you move into that third, just give it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, unless we're like talking maybe along the lines of comic books where they're so short and you have to move the story forward in that way. No.
So you're saying she should have given up?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just trying to be nice and agree with you just a little bit, make you feel better.
You're saying she never should have written these novels.
But at this point...
You're saying this is all garbage.
At this point, she is definitely not writing because she wants to write.
You're saying you regret your childhood.
Well, if you want to get into it. She's not writing because she wants to write. She's not writing out of necessity. She is wealthy and she is established at this point. So she does take a few more risks. She does play a little bit more with these books, which I think might be good.
I don't know. So far in this book, we haven't seen the risks as much as we seem to have seen things that J.K. likes.
Okay.
We want to shit on Tony Blair.
Okay.
And
now,
we want to shit on the American president.
if you want to look at J.K. as the author, she is a very politically minded person. She's always in trouble on Twitter for saying something, or always being praised for saying something
that's
about
Twitter.
About someone. And it does definitely feel in this. She wholeheartedly says, he's a prime minister who does this, but he doesn't deal with other politics of other nations because they're silly.
But we still have this very judgmental J.K. Rowling old school mentality here that she would never admit to. What do we see the Prime Minister doing here at the beginning?
What do we see him doing?
He's waiting next to the phone for a phone call from his boyfriend. That's the scene we have. We have the young girl waiting by the phone very patiently for boyfriend to call, right?
Okay. Gotta wait 3 days, I get you.
Does it not feel that way?
Kind of. It does seem like he is wholeheartedly in the right place at the right time. He's just sitting there waiting for nothing to happen, and then something happens. And he is taken aback by it, but this has happened before. I do think it is interesting, though, that the leader of the Muggle world being possibly Great Britain, because that seems to be where this is set, knows about the wizards and knows about the witches, but is willing to just yield and let them do their own thing because, well, we don't want to mess with them. It's a stretch. It is very unbelievable.
I actually thought that it was one of the better parts of this.
Really?
Yeah, because what else are we going to do there? How else are you going to explain this entire world taking place? How else are you going to explain the fact that no one ever intervenes with their stuff? How else are you going to explain the fact that the real world does exist and Harry Potter goes back to it every summer?
It's fair. You can explain it in that way, but I'm just saying it is not realistic. You tell the United States that there are witches and wizards who can do magic things and can make life easier by just waving their hands. We're going after them until we can figure it out.
We're going after them until we can figure out how to make them produce oil.
Absolutely.
That's what we're doing.
Yes, you can wave the wand and the oil will spill from the earth.
Yeah.
We're getting on it. Do you have anything else you want to say about this? Any predictions? Anything you want to get to? This is the first couple chapters of this novel.
So other than the fact that Snape's going to get the Defense Against the Dark Arts position and die in this book, I'm going to guess that there is going to be some other run-in with the Muggle world. I'm going to guess that Harry Potter becomes a big deal, because we have sort of his outing in the last book. But I would like to return to the sentiment that J.K. Rowling is just doing things that she likes again, because we get that entire chapter with Snape, who had been a very underutilized character throughout this entire series because it seemed she didn't know what she was doing with him.
Okay.
Is that fair to say that she didn't know that it felt like she didn't know what she was doing with him?
There's always been the argument, especially with JK and just between us and between a lot of people, is did she know where she was going with this? Or once she got there, did she start to backpedal and make it more prominent?
Yeah, I don't know that I would necessarily argue the latter there. It seemed like maybe she had something plotted out, but she didn't exactly know when to deploy the Snape tactic.
Okay.
It seemed that he was always a favored character of hers, especially since I'm telling you, Snape is modeled after Neil Gaiman.
Yeah?
In my head, Snape is Neil Gaiman.
Okay.
Even in that chapter that he's got with Bellatrix and Sissy that show up, he reads like Neil Gaiman talks.
Do you know who plays Snape in the film?
You've
Snapes.
told me before.
Alan Rickman
Okay.
So if you put Alan Rickman and Neil Gaiman next to each other, you have like the young hip Snape versus just the old school British Snape.
Right.
So like I think you nailed it right on the head.
Yeah, I defy you that if you are a Gaiman fan, or if you have even, because he does a lot of talking. So
Yes.
if you're a writer,
I like Gaiman. I
You've
do.
probably happened upon some of his talks and things like that, which are definitely worth looking up, even though I'm not a big fan of his. You keep his cadence and his countenance in your mind and read that second chapter and tell me that that is not Neil Gaiman through and through.
Okay.
So that's not necessarily a prediction. That's not necessarily. But I think that it would be impossible to be a British author and escape the gravity of Neil Gaiman.
Fair.
Right? He's huge. He's massive.
I mean, I 10 points to somebody if they can like Photoshop Neil Gaiman in some wizard robes for us, just so we can get the full picture.
Yeah,
I'd be about that
We'll
lifestyle.
get that on Twitter and Instagram.
I will. Now we will be back next week for 2 more chapters of Harry Potter. We're going to get Will and Won't, and we're going to get Horace Slughorn. We're going to figure out who this Slughorn character is.
Will and Won't. What is that?
That's chapter 3.
That's the name of the chapter?
Will and Won't.
Okay.
Okay. We're going to find out a little bit more about
Will
Snape.
and Won't. That's a very J.K. Rowling. Does he? Does he not?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Bunch of maybe.
But make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. We do Adrian Reads Harry Potter every single week here on Strip Cover Lit.
Until we're through with the shit.
Until we're through with it. We've got a book to go after this, so we got a while to tread through it.
There's one after this?
There's one after this, and we're going to get there, baby. We'll be back next week with one more episode of Adrian Reads Harry Potter. Make sure you hit that like button as well. Good?
Yeah.
I actually thought you'd kind of enjoy the Snape chapter, to be honest.
It wasn't as bad as a lot of it.